From loneliness to millions. The fluorescent lights of the Mumbai Engineering College library hummed above 22-year-old Varun's head as he stared at his laptop screen, reading the same rejection email he'd received hundreds of times before. Thank you for your interest in our company. Unfortunately, we have decided to move forward with other candidates who better match our requirements. 537 rejection emails. Varun had counted every single one. Fresh out of computer engineering with top grades from one of India's prestigious institutes, he should have been walking into a dream job. His professors had told him that American companies were desperate for skilled Indian engineers. His parents had sacrificed everything to pay for his education, believing that a degree would guarantee success in the land of opportunity. But sitting alone in that library, surrounded by the dreams of 1 billion people who would never get his chance, Varun realized a devastating truth. Having skills didn't matter if no one would give you the opportunity to use them. I was the most qualified unemployed person I knew, Varun would later reflect, his voice carrying the weight of those brutal months. I had the technical knowledge, the degrees, the certifications, but I was invisible. In India, I was competing with millions of equally qualified engineers. In America, I was just another foreign name on a resume that hiring managers would skip right over. The plan had been simple. Graduate, get hired by a multinational company, work for a few years, then either stay in India with international experience or find a way to move abroad. It was the path his parents had mapped out, the dream that had sustained his family through years of financial sacrifice. But simplicity, Varun was learning, doesn't account for the brutal realities of a globalized job market where thousands of brilliant engineers compete for positions that barely exist. The breaking point came on a sweltering July afternoon when Varun received his most humiliating rejection yet. He'd made it through 5 rounds of interviews with a prestigious software company. 5 rounds where he'd solved complex coding problems, impressed technical managers, and connected with team members who seemed genuinely excited to work with him. The final rejection email was worse than the others because it came with hope attached. Varun, you're incredibly talented, and we were impressed by your technical skills and personality. Unfortunately, we've decided to promote an internal candidate instead. We'll keep your resume on file for future opportunities. That night, Varun walked to the roof of his apartment building and looked out over Mumbai's sprawling lights. 7 million people in the city, most of them fighting for the same limited opportunities. He thought about his parents, who had worked double shifts to pay for his education. He thought about his younger sister, who was counting on his success to pave the way for her own dreams. Most of all, he thought about the suffocating feeling that his potential would die in this city, buried under the weight of too much competition and too few chances. I realized I could stay in Mumbai and be a very small fish in an ocean of identical fish, Varun recalls. Or I could go somewhere else and find an ocean where my specific skills and perspective would stand out, but that meant leaving everything I knew and starting completely over. The decision to move to London came after months of research and soul-searching. The UK offered opportunities for skilled immigrants, and London's tech scene was exploding with startups hungry for talent. More importantly, it offered something Mumbai couldn't, the chance to be different instead of identical. But nothing could have prepared Varun for the loneliness that hit him the moment he stepped off the plane at Heathrow Airport. In Mumbai, he'd been surrounded by family, friends, a culture that understood his references, food that tasted like home. In London, he was utterly, completely alone. Different accent, different customs, different ways of doing business. He'd traded the familiarity of home for the terrifying possibility of opportunity. The first months in London were brutal in ways that rejection emails could never be. He'd landed a decent job at a mid-sized tech company, but the work felt soulless after the excitement of his engineering studies. Worse was the social isolation. His colleagues were polite, but distant. He'd go entire weekends without speaking to anyone except shopkeepers and delivery drivers. Loneliness as an immigrant isn't just being alone, Varun explains, his voice heavy with remembered pain. It's being surrounded by people who don't understand your background, your struggles, your way of thinking. It's having no one to celebrate your wins with or help you process your losses. It's feeling like you're performing a character called Successful Immigrant, while inside you're just a scared kid who misses his mom's cooking. The loneliness was particularly acute in professional settings. In meetings, Varun would have brilliant insights but struggle to communicate them in ways his British colleagues understood. His directness, valued in Indian engineering culture, was perceived as rudeness in London's more diplomatic business environment. His passion for technical excellence was seen as intensity that made people uncomfortable. But it was this very loneliness that would become his secret weapon. Unable to rely on friends, family, or familiar cultural patterns, Varun was forced to develop skills that most people never need: a radical self-reliance, the ability to motivate himself without external validation, and most importantly, the capacity to understand and connect with people who were completely different from him. When you're truly alone, you learn things about yourself that comfortable people never discover, he reflects. I learned that I was stronger than I thought. I learned that I could adapt to situations that would have broken the version of myself who had never left Mumbai. Most importantly, I learned that my biggest limitation wasn't my background or accent or immigrant status. It was my belief about what was possible. The transformation began when Varun started treating his loneliness like a laboratory for personal development. Instead of going home after work to binge-watch Netflix and feel sorry for himself, he began spending evenings in bookstores and cafes, studying successful immigrants who had built extraordinary careers and businesses. He read every biography he could find of people who had transformed disadvantage into advantage. Indian immigrants who had become CEOs of major corporations, Mexican entrepreneurs who had built billion-dollar companies, Pakistani immigrants who had revolutionized entire industries. A pattern emerged from these stories. The most successful immigrants weren't the ones who tried to blend in and become invisible. They were the ones who leveraged their different perspectives, their hunger, their willingness to outwork everyone around them because they had more to prove and more to lose. I realized I'd been approaching my career all wrong, Varun says. I was trying to be like everyone else to fit into existing systems and prove I belonged. But the most successful immigrants create their own systems. They don't just join the game, they change the rules of the game. The epiphany came during a particularly difficult week at his tech job. Varun had been working on a project for months, contributing innovations that his team was excited about. But when it came time for promotions and recognition, he was passed over again. His manager, a well-meaning but culturally tone-deaf British man, told him he needed to work on his executive presence. That night, Alone in his tiny London apartment, Varun had what he now calls his mirror moment. I looked at myself and asked, "Are you going to spend your life begging other people to recognize your value? Or are you going to create your own opportunities where your value is undeniable?" The answer came from a place deeper than ambition. It came from survival instinct and accumulated frustration with a system that seemed designed to keep people like him in supporting roles forever. Instead of continuing to climb someone else's corporate ladder, Varun decided to build his own ladder. But he didn't quit his job immediately. Instead, he began a careful, methodical process of skill building and network creation that would eventually transform him from an invisible employee into a sought-after entrepreneur. The first step was understanding a crucial truth about modern professional success. Technical skills get you in the room, but communication and relationship building skills determine how far you go once you're there. Varun began studying communication with the same intensity he'd once applied to engineering problems. He took public speaking courses, joined professional networking groups, and forced himself into social situations that terrified him. Every conversation became practice for becoming the kind of person others wanted to work with and learn from. But more importantly, he began to see his immigrant experience not as something to overcome, but as his unique competitive advantage. Most people in London had similar backgrounds, similar educations, similar perspectives, he realized, but I had something they didn't. I understood what it felt like to start over, to prove yourself when no one believes in you, to succeed despite systems that aren't designed for your success. Those aren't just personal experiences, they're business assets. The coaching business started accidentally. Varun had been sharing his professional development journey on LinkedIn, writing posts about the challenges of being an immigrant in London's tech scene. Other immigrants began reaching out, asking for advice about everything from job interviews to salary negotiations to building professional networks from scratch. At first, he helped people for free, seeing it as a way to give back to a community that had supported him during his lonely early days in London. But then something interesting happened. The people he helped started getting remarkable results: job offers, promotions, successful career transitions. They began referring friends who referred more friends. I realized I wasn't just giving career advice, Varun reflects. I was teaching people how to transform their immigrant experience from a liability into a competitive advantage. I was showing them how to leverage their different perspectives, their hunger, their willingness to outwork everyone around them. The transition from free advice to paid coaching happened when Sarah, a Pakistani software engineer who had been struggling to advance in London's financial sector, got promoted to a senior role after working with Varun for 3 months. She insisted on paying him for his guidance, saying it had been more valuable than the expensive business school programs her British colleagues had attended. Sarah's success proved that what I was doing wasn't just motivational speaking, Varun explains. I was teaching systematic approaches to career advancement that worked specifically for immigrants. I was filling a gap in the market that no one else was addressing. Word spread through London's immigrant professional community with the speed of good news in a population hungry for success stories. Varun began charging for his services, starting with modest fees that reflected his clients' often limited budgets, but gradually increasing as his results became undeniable. The coaching methodology he developed was unlike anything else in the market because it addressed the specific psychological and practical challenges that immigrants face in Western professional environments. Most career coaches assume their clients grew up in the culture they're trying to succeed in, Varun explains. They don't understand the additional layers of complexity that come with being an outsider trying to break into insider networks. I was teaching people how to bridge cultural gaps, how to communicate across different styles, how to build trust when people have unconscious biases about your capabilities. But Varun's approach went deeper than just professional tactics. He was teaching people how to transform the pain of isolation into the power of unique perspective. Loneliness taught me empathy, he says. Being rejected taught me resilience. Being underestimated taught me to prove my worth through results instead of credentials. Every painful experience became a tool I could use to help other people avoid the same mistakes and accelerate their success. The business grew organically through referrals and word of mouth. Varun worked with clients during evenings and weekends while maintaining his tech job, reinvesting every pound he earned back into improving his skills and expanding his reach. He studied advanced coaching methodologies, earned certifications in leadership development, and most importantly, continued treating every client interaction as a laboratory for understanding what worked and what didn't. The breakthrough moment came when Varun realized his coaching practice had grown beyond his ability to serve everyone personally. He had a waiting list of potential clients, testimonials from successful career transformations, and a methodology that produced consistent results. I had accidentally built a business that was more fulfilling and financially promising than my engineering career, he recalls. But more than that, I had found my purpose, helping other immigrants unlock their potential in ways that traditional career guidance never addressed. The decision to leave his corporate job and focus full-time on coaching was terrifying but inevitable. By that point, Varun was earning more from his coaching practice than his salary, and the impact he was having on people's lives was far greater than anything he'd accomplished in his engineering role. I realized I could spend my life being a good employee, or I could spend it being an exceptional entrepreneur who created opportunities for others, he reflects. The choice was obvious, even if it was scary. The full-time transition allowed Varun to scale his impact in ways he'd never imagined possible. He developed online courses that could reach immigrants worldwide, created group coaching programs that built communities of mutual support, and established partnerships with organizations focused on immigrant professional development. But the real transformation was personal. The lonely immigrant who had counted rejection emails now found himself at the center of a global community of ambitious professionals who saw him as both mentor and inspiration. The loneliness never completely goes away, Varun admits, but I learned how to transform it from a source of pain into a source of connection. When you've been truly alone, you develop a superpower for understanding and helping other people who feel isolated. My biggest weakness became my greatest strength. Today, Let's Level Up serves hundreds of clients across multiple continents. What started as informal advice to fellow immigrants has grown into a multi-million-dollar coaching business that helps professionals transform their careers and lives. But Varun measures his success not in revenue numbers, but in the career transformations of his clients. Engineers who became CTOs, consultants who launched their own firms, mid-level managers who negotiated executive positions, immigrants who learned to leverage their differences instead of hiding them. Every client who succeeds validates something I believed during those lonely early days in London, Varun says, that our backgrounds aren't limitations to overcome. They're competitive advantages waiting to be unleashed. That being different in a room full of similar people is more valuable than being similar in a room full of different people. The business expanded beyond individual coaching to include corporate consulting, helping multinational companies better integrate and leverage their immigrant talent. Varun's insights about cross-cultural communication and immigrant motivation patterns became valuable to organizations trying to build more effective global teams. Companies started realizing that they weren't just hiring immigrants. They were hiring people with unique perspectives, exceptional resilience, and proven ability to adapt and succeed in challenging environments, he explains. I was teaching them how to see immigrant employees as assets rather than challenges. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of Varun's success is how it changed the trajectory of his family's story. His parents, who had sacrificed so much for his education, lived to see their son not just succeed in a foreign country, but create opportunities for hundreds of other families pursuing similar dreams. His younger sister, inspired by his journey, pursued her own entrepreneurial path, launching a successful digital marketing agency that serves clients across 3 continents. The cycle of limitation had been broken, replaced by a new family narrative of possibility and achievement. Success isn't just personal, Varun reflects. When an immigrant succeeds, it changes what becomes possible for everyone in their community. It proves that the barriers we face aren't insurmountable. They're just challenges that require different strategies and greater persistence. Today, when Varun speaks to audiences of aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious professionals, he always returns to the same central message. Your biggest obstacles can become your greatest advantages if you're willing to transform your relationship with them. Loneliness taught me self-reliance. Rejection taught me resilience. Being underestimated taught me to let results speak louder than credentials, he says. Every painful experience became a tool I could use to help other people and build something meaningful. The immigrant who once counted rejection emails now helps others write success stories. The engineer who felt invisible in Mumbai's crowded job market now stands on stages around the world, sharing insights about turning disadvantage into competitive advantage. From 537 rejections to a $25 million business, Varun's journey proves that sometimes the longest path leads to the most extraordinary destinations. But perhaps most importantly, his story demonstrates that success isn't about avoiding loneliness, rejection, or failure. It's about learning to transform those experiences into the foundation of something greater than you ever thought possible. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles as an immigrant, an outsider, or someone trying to build something from nothing. The question is whether you'll let those obstacles define your limitations or fuel your determination to create opportunities that didn't exist before you decided to pursue them.